Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Plan B Success. Today, I'm really excited to have an interview with a coach. Before I begin, let me give you a quick glimpse of who it is, and then I'll have him introduce himself. Christian Modjaiso, that's the name of the person. Christian Modjaiso is from the Democratic Republic of Congo and is the founder of Extreme Stress Coach and Observe. He's the CEO of Observe, two different companies that he has manned and he's working on in terms of managing stress and pain and human suffering. Welcome, Christian.
Rajiv, is that how I pronounce your name, Rajiv?
That's correct.
All right, great. So, yes, I am super excited, Rajiv, to be here on Plan B Success. Yes, and I listened to the podcast a while back. One of the things that I really liked is how knowledgeable you are about management principles and just all sorts of nuanced stuff about work and life. So it's a great honor to speak to you today.
Thank you very much. So, Christian, why don't we begin with you giving a quick introduction of yourself for the listeners and we can go from there?
Okay, so my name is Christian Modjaiso, and I am an extreme stress coach. Actually, the extreme stress coach. So basically, what this means is that I help extremely stressed people to deal with their stress. Now, I'm also the founder, I'm from the Congo, as Rajiv mentioned. That's my nationality. Just as Rajiv also mentioned, I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Observe. The company is really focused on helping extremely stressed people to deal with their stress. But the unique thing about the company is that we deal with stress via observation, right? Instead of just like reading books or following what people said, the focus here is on observing your problem and looking to the problem to give you solutions. So this is what one of the unique approaches that I use and the cornerstone of the Observe.
Great. Can you dive a little deeper into extreme stress and observe and what you plan on doing there?
Observe is based on this idea, or maybe we'll start it this way. If I'm feeling extremely stressed, right? Almost our entire society tells us that if I'm feeling anxiety, fear, depression, our society teaches us, and this is kind of the common idea, that the external environment caused this. So that if, let's say, I am under a lot of pressure, I'm feeling a lot of pressure and stress at work, the reason I'm stressed is because of my workplace or my annoying boss or my annoying parents who don't understand me. They're the cause of my stress. This is what we are taught. One of the first realizations I had, and one of the cornerstones of what I do, is that if you actually take a look, if you actually observe in these moments when you're feeling extremely stressed, you'll realize that the stress is not coming from the outside. It's generated by you. In fact, to be more specific, the stress comes from the fact that you don't have mastery over your own thoughts and emotions. It's your thinking and your emotions and your body that is causing the stress. External events are just triggers. So this is the beginning, and this is what ties into observe. What I learned is that this is from experience and also just from applying it in numerous situations. What I learned, and you don't even need to believe me, just look at your own life. It doesn't matter what it is. If you observe it, you'll become understand how it works better. Right? So if let's say we could use just a simple, it's like somebody, right? Like, I mean, you've probably had the experience of meeting a person that you thought to be very intimidating.
Mm-hmm.
At first, maybe you were scared of them, but the most time you spent with them, the more you understood kind of what they're like, and you became less afraid of them over time. This is the same with thought and emotion, which is the generator of stress. The more you observe your thoughts and emotions, the better you understand how they work. Hence, the better you're able to use them to generate the kind of internal state you want, other than letting external events trigger a state of stress that you do not want.
Okay. So, Christian, let's talk about yourself. So, what caused you to go down this direction of starting these stress management kind of companies?
There's a simple answer to that question is that I was suffering and I didn't want to suffer. This is really my motivation for starting Observe. I don't want to suffer, and I also don't want other people to suffer. And so naturally, I had to figure out how to do it. And my life has been filled with many events. Many events. There's no particular event. No one event is the one that did it. But it was a combination of many different forms of suffering that eventually got me to say, look, I really need to understand this stress. I got to figure out a way to handle it, make sure it doesn't take over my life, and in turn, let me do it for other people. There's many such incidents that brought this desire to me. There's one I usually talk about. In this episode, I'm going to talk about a different one. It was also a trigger for me. So, yes, I'm from the Congo. Now, I actually studied, I have a degree in mathematics, and I got that one from the United States. Right, so I went to a school called Harvey Mudd College in Claremont, California. So that's where I got my degree in mathematics. Now, when I went there when I went to America, obviously I didn't have family there. So I had some people, I had someone who decided to host me. And this person was, we became very close. We spent like 3 years together. The summer holidays, I'd go to her place. And she was my mother, my mother in America. Now, we were very close. I loved her very much, but, her life wasn't going well. Now, in fact, almost every dimension of life, she wasn't doing well. So her relationships with people weren't good. Most of the time, she was fighting, always in conflict with people. I mean, she was even in conflict with the cats and dogs, so yelling at them. Of course, the health was not good, so she was like overweight, unable to leave the couch sometimes to climb up the stairs. She had a lot of medication in the cabinet, like a cabinet full of medication for all sorts of conditions. Right. So basically, and she didn't like the work she was at. She didn't have the love relationship she wanted. So basically, just things weren't working out well for her. She was really on every dimension of life. She was just things were just going down. The one success she had had, one thing she was proud of, was the house that she owned, and we grew close together. I don't even know how we had a great relationship because the others were never good. But what happened over time? One day, I mean, I had gone out to get some pizza, and when I came back, we found her dead in the toilet.
Oh boy.
Yeah, yeah, just dead on the toilet seat, right? Found her there. And I basically, within just that short time, the people who work at the mortuary services, the people come to take a body away. So they came by the house, and I saw her being lifted, put onto a stretcher, and dragged out of this house that she thought she owned. She thought she owned the house, but in that moment I realized actually not at all. She never owned the house at all because she left. She left and she went and left the house there. Now it's with death. You never know. Death affects us in profound ways. At least death affected me tremendously, and I didn't even know all the ways in which it did. But one of the things I realized is that I love her very much, but I do not want to live a life like she did, right? Because when she died in like her 60s, late 60s, okay? And
Mm-hmm.
up to her late 60s, she had never like mastered the basic lesson that she's the source of her problems, not other people. It was always everybody else's fault, not her fault. And I thought to myself, look, I don't want to be like this. I don't want to hit 65, 70 and not have mastered the basics of how to have a good relationship, how to take care of myself, how to be joyful. This was one of many very important triggers. And eventually, I started the company for that very reason. I realized before I knew I had all this suffering, I never realized it was my inability, my incompetence with thoughts and emotions that was the source of my stress. Once I realized this, and I realized that I can actually have greater control over my own inner state by observing it. Once I learned this, I mean, I put the pieces together, and I was looking to start a business anyway. And so I said, okay, great. How do we? So that's where the idea for Observe came from, creating a company that helps people to deal with their stress, but by observing it for themselves.
Wow. So from pure mathematics to what you're doing today, so you could probably call this the point or the incident that changed you to pursue what you're pursuing today.
Yeah. Yes, one of many. That's right.
So for you personally, your own life, what would you consider the lowest point in your life where you probably felt alone, tired, ready to give up? and then this epiphany of doing something different?
I spent my entire life in Africa. I mean, except for like one quick trip to the airport somewhere in Italy, then we came back. Visa bounced. I think mom's visa bounced. So, but other than that, look, I spent my entire life on the African continent. And then the first time I went to the United States was to start college in the U.S. This was my first time being in an environment where I was in the minority. Right in Africa, I mean, North Africa is mostly Arab, but the vast majority of the population in Africa is black. I was used to being in the majority, let's say, as a black person. And I went to this place, and all of a sudden, I was in the minority in the US. This was something totally new to me. I felt inferior because, it was one of those very super technical schools, like think MIT. It's an MIT type school, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They just go, right. It's just STEM school, science, technology, math. That's it. So, and you imagine going around the planet, picking the sharpest students in math and science. Okay, pick them from India, pick them from everywhere on the planet, the United States, of course, and then bring them to one place. That was a place with people tremendously sharp intellect. Right. So I found myself there, and obviously I felt inferior to the other guys. All of them, in my perception, were all smarter than me, all better than me. I kept thinking to myself, they surely made a mistake in admitting me here. Soon enough, they'll find out they made a mistake. I don't belong here. Right? I'm not as smart as these other kids. Okay, and things just got worse and worse this way. Then my grades began to go down, right? And then I started skipping class, right? Because uh, basically I didn't want to go into the class. When I started doing poorly, I didn't want to go to class because I felt if I went to class, the professor will be able to look at me, see how mediocre I am, and again confirm why I don't belong there. So this was terrible, and I was failing on every dimension. Right, I was failing physically also. I picked up a lot of weight. I was eating a lot of junk food in America, not taking care of my body, very low self-esteem. I was failing academically, obviously. I was failing spiritually. I was failing emotionally. I was having difficulty making friends. My life was just going downhill, felt totally isolated. And at some point, I decided, hey, what's the point of living? Why am I wasting my time here? So I went to Google and looked for the most efficient ways to end things. And the strategy, the efficient method I settled on was to jump. Go to the top of the Shanahan building. This was the math building it is the math building at Harvey Mudd. Climb to the very top and jump. This I was sure, look, this is the end of my misery. I jump, I die, I end my miserable life. This was one of the lowest points of my life. And this was the beginning of me knowing that something has to change. I have to feel, because one thing I realized later was that all the stress I endured at Harvey Mudd was not caused by Harvey Mudd. The professors were super nice. There were many people willing to support me. The US college, at least the private universities, the one I went to, they had so much support structure, so many second chances. I was the one who was stressing myself out. And this was one of the realizations that came from that experience. And that the key to dealing with my own stress is not going to come from changing my environment. It's going to come from understanding how my thoughts and emotions function, and that knowledge alone will transform me.
So, Christian, at what point did you have that realization? If you went so low that you were
Hmm.
deciding to end your life, what triggered that change for you?
So, I mean, it wasn't one particular event. It's kind of like growing old. It just happens gradually. A few events, a few days, and one day you look in the mirror, you're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm old now." This is kind of it. It was that event was a trigger, just showing me that something is seriously wrong. After a year and a half, I actually got kicked out of Harvey Mudd, so I transferred to another school, still in the U.S., just a walking distance from Harvey Mudd, called Pitzer College. This school was much more relaxed. But even there, I was stressed. Right? I was still stressed at that school, and I noticed that it doesn't matter. I can change environment, but even when I change my environment, my stress goes with me. When I travel to Africa, my stress is there. When I go to Harvey Mudd, my stress is there. I move to a different college, my stress is there. There was no one particular event. There was many events. This experience at Harvey Mudd of getting kicked out and just wanting to just end things, jump and finish it all. That was just one of the lowest.
So, how did you eventually tackle your stress? How did you get to the point where you are now with the realization that these are not just external factors; it's internal factors, and this is how I take control of it?
Sorry, please repeat the question. I don't seem to understand.
Sure. What I'm asking is, when you went through so much of stress and experiencing all that, how did you take control of it eventually to get to the point where you are now?
Okay. Not one event, a series of events again. Let me pick one that really began this for me.
Okay.
I mean, I was the kind of guy that can hold on to hurt and pain for like weeks, right? Which is many adults are like that. Kids are obviously the opposite, right? A kid, you can annoy a kid now or make them feel sad. After 30 minutes, they're joyful, laughing. They seem to have forgotten what happened 30 minutes ago. Right? But for adults, obviously, that changes. So I was also in this kind of state. Now, usually, if I had a something painful happen to me, I could hold on to it for a week or way longer. So there's this time I took an exam. I took a graduate school exam, right? And I did very badly on that exam. Terrible grades on that exam. It was so bad, like 13th percentile or something, right? Now that was the sort of event that would have depressed me for a month or more. But this time, when I received those results, I decided to do something different. It's like, I'm feeling terrible. I feel like my world has just crashed. Let me just sit down and see what's happening within me. So I sat down on the on the porch outside of the house. I sat down, closed my eyes, right? Closing eyes to shut out distraction. Sit comfortably, right? So I don't get distracted by any pains. And I just decided to sit there and let whatever happens happens. Right? So obviously there was all sorts of thoughts running through my mind. One was that I'm a loser, I'm a failure, I'll never succeed at anything. This is how it will always be for me. Or maybe I should take it again. My career is over, blah, blah, blah. Right? So all sorts of thoughts run. This time I decided not to participate. I'm not gonna feed them. I'm also not gonna discourage them. When I feed them, they grow bigger. When I fight them, they grow bigger also. There's nothing left to do. Just let them happen. So I let them play out. I also let the emotions, whatever I was feeling in my body, play out. I don't remember how long I sat there. Maybe an hour, maybe to around 2 hours or 2.5 hours. But after those 2.5 hours, the pain subsided dramatically to the point where I was able to think straight again. In fact, usually something like that would be written all over my face. Everybody would know a tragedy just happened. But after sitting for 2.5 hours, just observing this pain, this loss, this failure, I mean, calm returned. I was able to go about my day perfectly fine. No one in the house even noticed that I failed that exam, which is something that would have been unheard of before. And I applied the same process to other intense emotions that I experienced, such as anger. There's once I yelled in tremendous anger at the maids I supervised, right? So in addition to running the business, I also manage maids who clean the house and take care of the food. And there's this time I lost control and just yelled at them in extreme anger. In fact, I spoke with so much anger that the maid broke down in tears. And I felt, just not really because she was crying, but within myself, I wasn't feeling good. So I said, okay, let me sit down and observe this also. So I sat down on the couch, closed my eyes, and let whatever happens, happen. And I realized on an experiential level, this anger is killing me. In fact, that was the thought. And this dramatically transformed my behavior. I was much more hesitant to shout at people in anger, not because I didn't want to cause them pain. I just had seen, I had observed how bad anger was for me on an experiential level. And this is all these events basically got me to think about the observe approach, right? How to deal with a stressful situation by observing it. Because by apparently doing nothing, I was able to diffuse very strong emotions and do something I'd never been able to do in my whole life, which is you, Rajiv, you make me angry now. After an hour, 2 hours, I'm not angry anymore. That is something I was never able to do. For the first time, observation was a tool by which I could do this. And now I thought, look, I gotta share this with every human being on the planet. And this is what I'm on a mission to do now.
Yeah, this is pretty intriguing, right? So you let your whatever that emotion wash over you, you give it time, and then you get your balance back before you act. I've done this with emails, especially in a
Please
work
share.
environment. You're not happy with something, and you generally get the tendency to shoot off an email before you think. I've done that. I've been
Yep,
guilty of that.
yep.
And then at times, then later, what I learned is, later, what I used to do is I would type that email up right there and then I would leave it alone and then come back after a few hours or the next day and look at it.
Mm,
And I'm in a totally different frame of mind, and then I would rework that email before I sent it out. So that's how I I managed stress on my end, especially with communications.
yeah, that's right. You're pointing on something very key, which is something I realized is that whenever I'm in a state of stress, actually any form of intense emotion, right? One of them is anger, the other one is sadness, a low kind of emotion. The other one is extreme excitement, there's fear. All these emotions actually diminish intelligence. Right? 10 times out of 10,
That's
whenever I take an action under these intense emotions, I regret it later.
Yeah,
Right?
that's so
Especially,
true.
that's right, because in such a state, intelligence is low, which is what you're realizing. The email that you're shooting, right? The email that you're writing out in the moment when you're just really pissed. That email is, when you look at it later, I'm sure you've realized that when you come back the day after, it looks maybe even very foolish, very, not an intelligent email at all. I don't know if that's the observation you made or.
That is absolutely, you're right, and that's why you rework it before you send it, because if you had sent it the way it was at that point in time, you're causing more damage than actually taking
Absolutely.
control of it. You're right.
Mm.
So let me ask you this: what would you consider the highest point in your life to date?
Wow, yeah. So this kind of thing is hard for me, Rajiv. And the reason it's hard is because for me to do that, I'd have to be aware, first of all the difficult moments in my life. I'm not aware of all of the many forgotten.
Hmm.
So the best I can do here is I can talk of some of moments that I consider to be very high. But to pick the highest is not, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah, why don't you talk about one?
Mm. So this is a high moment that happens frequently, mostly when I'm in an observation session or a meditation session. It's just a moment of total calm. The mind is empty and I'm just there.
Hmm.
This is the high point. It's a high point that happens often. So, like, every day I have at least one such moment. That's like the best.
Okay.
It's a moment of tremendous intelligence.
Awesome, awesome. I think that's the moment where you are at peace with yourself, I guess. I do have a few questions. I just want to shoot them quickly and see what answer comes to your mind immediately, and whatever comes, just let us know. What are you most thankful for?
One of the things I'm very thankful for is the fact that my internal state is in my hands. Right now, I've come a tremendous way, but obviously, I don't have total mastery over my thoughts and emotions. I don't have total control over my system, my mind, body, whatever else is involved. No, I don't have much control over those things. So that's why I'm not talking about eradicating stress. I'm talking about becoming happy or reducing stress because I don't know how to do that.
Hmm.
But one thing I'm very grateful for is that I am causing, in moments when I'm miserable, I am causing my misery. This, I think, is a great blessing, because if I'm causing it, it means that with a little bit of work and a couple of observations, I can cause something else: joy, calmness, ecstasy.
Sure, makes sense. What are you most scared of?
The thing that frightens me the most is dying without having figured out how to make myself joyful all the time, regardless of what is happening around me. Yeah, if my life ends and I haven't done that, I failed.
Sure. And on that note, what are you most happy about?
Hmm. So what I'm most happy about is gonna be same reason as what I'm most grateful for.
Sure.
I'm most happy about the possibility that I can end my own suffering and the suffering of other people.
And I'm sure that's what you look forward to. So, what would you like your legacy to be?
Well, my legacy, interesting. Well, so obviously, I don't know if it will matter when I'm dead, right? I don't know if I'll care what people on earth, people who are alive think of me once I'm dead. The sort of thing I'd like to leave behind on the planet is just very powerful tools that people can use to create joy. This is what I want to leave behind on the planet, right?
Very
Here was a
nice.
joyful person who ended his own misery and the misery of everyone that he came into contact with.
Makes perfect sense. Before we wind up, what would be that one takeaway that you would want our listeners to know?
Okay, so the takeaway would be this. It's really just one word: observe. Pay attention. Your stress is generated by you. If you pay attention to it, if you pay attention to your thoughts and emotions, if you just observe them without trying to control them, without trying to suppress them, that alone is the tool, the key to your transformation. So if people want to take away something, it's that. Just observing, you find yourself in a very stressful situation. Sit down, keep your back straight to be as alert as possible, close your eyes to shut out distractions, and just observe what is happening within you. This one thing will be the key to drastically reducing a vast amount of the stress that you experience on a daily basis.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Christian. For the listeners, one of the things that I'll be doing is I'll be adding Christian's websites where he is doing this work. Also, he's got some free resources that he would like to share. I'll add that as well, and you guys can go and
Mm.
check it out. As parting words, anything that you'd like to add, Christian?
Yeah, I mean, so you've mentioned free resources. I do have a couple for the audience. The first one is this: if you have a question and you'd like me to answer it, you have maybe something stressing you out, you like my help, maybe my input on it, or maybe you just want to go and like recommend that I speak on some other podcast, something like that, go to Observe.host and click on the links will be added by Rajiv. So just go to Observe.host and click on contact, and you'll be able to contact me, ask me any question, or suggest anything. The second thing is this: if you love the ideas I've been sharing and you want to learn more about this Observe approach, then what I recommend is you go to Observe.host and click on the Observe approach. This will give you free and instant access to a simple method that you can apply immediately to deal with any problem that is stressing you out. And the final thing is this: if at this moment you're at a very low point in your life and you're feeling so extremely stressed that you're convinced that your life sucks, then for a limited time only, I'm offering a free My Life Sucks coaching session. In this coaching session, we'll get a crystal clear vision of the life you want. We'll figure out precisely what is making your life suck, and you leave the session renewed, re energized, and confident in your ability to transform your own life. To take advantage of this limited time only free My Life Sucks coaching session, just go to Observe.host and click on free coaching. Now, all of these free resources will be made available to you in the show notes by Rajiv. Otherwise, thanks a lot for having me on. This is a very good interview. You paid total attention, you listened, you asked great questions. It's an honor to have spoken with you.
Thank you so much, Christian. It's been a pleasure having you on here. Thank you so much and wish you all the very best with the work that you're doing. Hey, folks, I hope you like that. And if you do, please do subscribe and leave a review on iTunes and share the word, spread the word so others may enjoy these podcasts as well. Thank you.